Why do we always have to take your mom's car?
The Honda Del Sol. If there's one Honda Acura product from the golden era of the mid to late 80s and early to mid 90s that everyone seems to dislike, or at least have mixed feeling towards, it's the Del Sol. Yet on paper, the Del Sol seems like it should be a win. Built on the amazing 5th generation Civic platform with a B16 VTEC option, it should be a dream come true for all the people that complained when Honda didn't give us a VTEC CRX or a B-Series EG hatch like they got in Japan. But paper doesn't always translate to reality. So what do people not like about the Del Sol? Is it the styling? The headlights, I think most of us can agree, look a little tacky, but they honestly are shaped a lot like the Lexus SC 300/400 headlights, and I think the Lexus SC is one of the best looking Japanese coupes of the 90s. Also, it's not a hatch, and I think that might have disappointed some. Instead, we got a target top convertible, but not everyone is into those, especially if you don't live in the right climate for it. But I've seen Honda drivers overlook a lot of flaws just to drive a car with a B-Series VTEC. So today let's do a deep dive into the Del Sol year by year and see if it really is deserving of all its criticism, or is it secretly an underrated gem? The Honda Del Sol was released in North America for the 1993 model year. In some international markets it was still called the CRX or the CRX Del Sol, but in Canada and the US it was marketed as the Civic Del Sol. If you're wondering about the Del Sol part, well, Del Sol is Spanish for of the sun, so the name literally translates to Honda Civic of the Sun. Now, we didn't actually get that B-Series option for the first model year Del Sol. Initially there were just two trims, S and SI. Both used D-Series engines. The S model using the 1.5 liter D15B7 rated at 102 horsepower, which was a non-VTEC engine borrowed from the 5th gen Civic DX, LX, and CX models, and the SI using the 125 horsepower D16Z6, a 1.6 liter single overhead cam VTEC engine shared with the 5th generation Civic Si. This makes the Del Sol Si engine already up almost 20 horsepower from a North American CRX Si, and we haven't even gotten to the good engine yet. 0 to 60 time with the Si engine was about 8 seconds. When it comes to styling, as I mentioned before, it was a target top, which may not be everyone's cup of tea, but the aerodynamics of the car were well designed enough that with the roof removed, the occupants were not bombarded by too much wind or buffeting. The aluminum top is easy to remove, and there is a tray in the trunk that holds the top without sacrificing any trunk space, which eliminates the main complaint I personally have with many target tops and T-top cars that leave you with nowhere to store the roof except at home in your garage. Another feature I really like is the power sliding glass rear window, which you can roll up or down with the top on or off. The target top was the only way Del Sols could be equipped in the US, but in Japan and Europe there was a trans top option in which an electric motor would retract the roof into the trunk automatically with the push of a button. It reminds me a little bit of the current Gen MX-5 Miata's RF top. The front end we already touched on. It's got the four-eyed round headlight look that was kind of a theme in the early 90s for Japanese sports cars, with the Lexus SC doing it the best and the Del Sol doing it the worst. The interior is very simple, but you do get a completely unique dash and gauge cluster over what would be in a Civic. It's inoffensive and well laid out, but very basic and plain. You may notice these blanks on the doors that don't seem to serve a purpose, but on Japanese models there was actually a courtesy light here. JDM models could also be equipped with automatic climate control and optional traction control. Then there's the seats. Yeah, not the most attractive looking, and the pinstripe in the middle that would match the exterior color of the car may have seemed like a cute novelty on paper, but I don't think it translated into reality very well. The seats were advertised as being waterproof, which is a great feature on a target top car, especially ones that leak more water than Preludes leak oil. Yeah, apparently these target tops were pretty notorious for water leaks, even when they were new, and I've read that this was a big factor in why Del Sol sales fell off so dramatically after just a few years. Well, if they do leak, at least those seats are waterproof, right? Although by the amount of disgusting, mangy, moldy Del Sol seats I've seen on Marketplace, I think a lot of people may have taken that waterproof seat thing a little too literally. Dude, I spilled my Fruitopia on your seat. You got something I can wipe it off with? No need, man. These seats are waterproof. Just leave it and let her ferment. Why are you drinking Fruitopia though? Cause it's the 90s and I'm all out of Crystal Pepsi. So what was the Del Sol's main competition at the time? It wasn't a hot hatch anymore, it was marketed as a two-seater roadster. And therein lies another one of its issues, because one would normally assume a two-seater roadster would be a full-on sports car. And by that I mean rear-wheel drive. The Del Sol's main competition was the Mazda Miata, but the Miata knows what it is. It's a sports car. So it goes all out. To hell with trunk space, this is a sports roadster and it needs to be rear-wheel drive. But we all know Honda, they just arrogantly assumed that their front-wheel drive target top Civic could hang with the real sports cars. I read a 1993 article from Car and Driver where they actually tested the Del Sol SI against its main competition, the Miata, the Alfa Romeo Spider, and the Mercury Capri XR2. Now the Del Sol beat out the Alfa Romeo and the Mercury, although that's not saying much, and placed second, with the Miata taking first place. What's really interesting is that the author of this article admitted that the Del Sol is the most practical and technically the best all-around car of the bunch, but it isn't the best sports car of the bunch. And that's what matters, because the Del Sol is supposed to be a sports car. If you want a practical car on this platform that you can drive year-round, then get the Civic Si hatch. It's actually 60 pounds lighter. It's 1994. Keanu Reeves is trapped on a speeding bus, console gamers are deciding if they want to play Sonic and Knuckles or Donkey Kong Country, and the Del Sol enters its second year of production in North America. And this time, they aren't messing around. Honda added a new VTEC model for 1994 to the Del Sol lineup, equipped with the B16 dual overhead cam VTEC outputting 160 horsepower. This new model, known as the Del Sol VTEC, was positioned above the SI. Available exclusively with a manual transmission, the VTEC Del Sol could now do 0 to 60 in 6.4 seconds, and a thicker front stabilizer bar and added rear stabilizer bar combined with stiffer springs greatly improved the handling feel over the SI model. Looking back today, the trim levels of the Del Sol may seem a little confusing, since we are used to seeing the SI always the highest trim level, or at least the highest sporty trim level. But this actually was not too abnormal in the early days of VTEC, as the 4th gen Prelude did this as well, with the addition of the Prelude VTEC model positioned above the Prelude SI. In the case of the Del Sol, perhaps some extra confusion is added, since technically the Del Sol SI has VTEC too, however it's the single overhead cam VTEC compared to the much higher outputting dual overhead cam VTEC. Additional changes for 1994 included an upgraded cassette radio after many complaints about the weak output on the 1993 radio, and a standard passenger side airbag. Despite the much upgraded performance of the VTEC model, overall Del Sol sales were actually down slightly over the previous year. In 1995, Honda dropped the Civic prefix from the Del Sol name, so it was now known as just the Honda Del Sol, which is what everyone was calling it anyway. 1995 model year changes saw redesigned target top seals to help prevent water leaks that were already plaguing the first two model years. ABS was added to the VTEC trim, center console heater vents could now be closed, there were new alloy wheels on the SI and VTEC trims, a remote trunk release, and a low fuel light. As Honda had identified by now that most North Americans don't pay attention to their gauges and need idiot lights, much to John Davis's objections. 1996 was the refresh year, and the round auxiliary fog lights on the front end would be eliminated. The engines were now OBD2 emission standard and updated to the 6th generation Civic platform, meaning the S model now had the 1.6 liter D16Y7 from DX and LX Civics, and the SI got the 1.6 liter single overhead cam VTEC D16Y8 from EX models. On the VTEC models, the B16A3 was now the B16A2, but there really isn't much difference other than OBD2 and peak torque output occurring at a slightly lower RPM. All models received new seat and carpet materials, and I do like the new seats a lot better. Unfortunately though, the updated engines and redesigned front-end styling wasn't enough to regain consumers' interest, and Del Sol sales numbers continued to plummet. No significant changes were made for the 1997 model year, and it would be the last model year for North America, selling only 5,603 units in the US. The rest of the world would get one more year of the Del Sol, with the final model year being 1998. Also, it looks like they never removed those front auxiliary fog lamps on models outside of North America. So what went wrong? Too many water leaks? Unattractive styling? I think it's simpler than that. The Del Sol is a two-seater target top sports car that's trying to compete with the Mazda Miata, but is also trying to be practical at the same time. The problem is, buyers who want a true sports car generally want rear-wheel drive, but buyers who want a practical car are very unlikely to buy a two-seater, so the Del Sol, while not a bad car by any means, is stuck in limbo, somewhere between a sports roadster and economy car, trying to appeal to everyone but attracting almost no one, much like my Tinder profile. I think the CRX got away with this because front-wheel drive in a sporty hatchback is forgivable. Front-wheel drive in a target top roadster is not. All that being said though, the Del Sol VTEC with the B16 is no joke. It will crush an NA Miata in a straight line, but the true appeal to a well-built sports car is about more than straight line acceleration and trunk space. It's about how it feels to throw around corners and truly drive the vehicle. Because let's be honest, if you don't care how a car feels and handles on the back roads, and you don't have the desire to kick the back end out every once in a while, you aren't buying a two-seater target top sports car to begin with.